So, I mean, I find that people like evidence that things work. So,
Mm.
I
Yeah.
do really like an evidence-based framework that there's one that's called the 5 Ways to Wellbeing. There's also one called the 10 Keys to Happier Living. And actually, a bit of a tip, the Action for Happiness website is really good with all sorts of ideas for how you can live in that way. But the 5 Ways to Wellbeing is so simple. It's
Mhm.
about giving. So giving your time to others, volunteering on a Saturday in a charity shop, for example. It's about connections, because with connections, it's support, isn't it? Connections, not just with family and friends, but your work colleagues, with your neighbours, with people on the bus. You need a range of connections to feel your best.
Mhm.
And obviously, being listened to is so powerful. If you're stressed and you can talk to somebody where you feel really listened to with empathy, it's going to make you feel so much better. The third of the 5 ways is taking notice, which is what we've just talked about with mindfulness. And then there's the fourth one is keep learning. So learning new skills, not necessarily just work related, but playing the guitar, whatever. And then finally being active, but being active at the right time, because if you
Mhm.
kind of go for a big run just before bed, then you might not be able to sleep. But there's another one which is a bit more sort of therapy, leaning towards therapy, I suppose. And that's a technique that's about challenging your thoughts. Because if you think about stress, it's elicited because of your thoughts, really. So we have to not always accept our thoughts. We might want to challenge them, because that's what triggers our stress response quite often. So if you've ever had cognitive behavioral therapy, then that's something that you can do through therapy, but you can do it on your own as well. So I don't know whether you've heard of thinking distortions, but there's about 11 quite common thinking distortions, and one of those is catastrophizing. Now, let's face it, many of us catastrophized 2 years ago because of COVID. We're all going to, this is never going to change. Perhaps people are thinking in sort of black and white thinking, or they're generalizing. So these thoughts are quite unhelpful. And the problem is, your mental health is really about your thinking, your feelings, and your behavior, and the link between those three things. So take an example where your friend is walking down the road and you wave at them, "Hey, it's Debbie," and they ignore you. What would your immediate thought be if that happened to you, Anne Jeanette?
Well, first of all, I'd be thinking, do they normally wear glasses? Have they seen me?
Yeah,
But then I might be thinking, oh, is it something I've said? Is it something I've done?
exactly. Yeah. See, a lot of people, when I ask them that question, and I challenge your listeners to think what their answer might be, your initial response was quite positive, but most people will turn to the negative response, which is, "Oh no, what have I done? They don't like me." Now, the
Mm.
problem is you have that thought, that then affects your feelings, and that then affects your behavior. The consequences could then be that you don't bother contacting them next time you go out for a drink with your mates because you think they don't like you.
Yeah.
So we have to just not take the initial thoughts that we have as read. We need to challenge our thoughts, challenge our feelings, and make sure that we can trust them in order to then react, and behave. We need to choose our behavior.
And is that what you're describing there? Is that a form of cognitive behavioral therapy?
Yes, that is something that you can do through therapy. But as I say, I think that even if you've had therapy, it's something that can benefit you your whole life,
Oh, yeah.
because
Once you
we
learn
all,
the techniques, yeah.
yeah,
I just
yeah, but
wondered
you,
because I know lots of people who have benefited from CBT.
yeah,
And I wonder still if it's available through the doctor, through the NHS. I know once upon a time it certainly was. Do you
yes,
know
it
if it's
is.
still
No, it
available?
is. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But unfortunately, Anjanette, the NHS is obviously underfunded. And if you're lucky enough to have an employer that gives you an employee assistance program or private health insurance, you'll get it much faster. If you do it yourself, it'll be maybe 50 quid a session, I'm not sure. But a lot of GPs have CBT therapists in their surgery, but there may be a bit of a waiting list. But there's so many charities out there. And even if you're thinking, I'm stressed, this has been going on for a long time, I'd encourage you to get some help, because stress can turn into something much more serious. Stress is not a mental illness, but it can lead to mental health conditions and mental illness. So addressing your stress is really the big message. Don't just ignore it. Think about, what is it that's going on for me? Why am I stressed? What is it that's in my mind? Do I actually need to have all this stuff in my mind? Can I actually get some of this stuff off my mind? Because some of it I can't even control. And things like the situation with Ukraine, do we need to watch the news all the time? Do we need to constantly check our phones? Do we have to have alerts on our phone with news bulletins? That's not helping us. Maybe just once a day, we look at a reputable source of information. So we need to protect ourselves. With so much adversity in the world at the moment, we have to think about, what can I cope with? And we just need to be assertive and practice self-care.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a really, really valuable points you've made there. And for our listeners, the point you made as well about, in terms of CBT, because it is really valuable, is seek it out through your workplace. If, as Debbie said, if you've got an EAP, an employee assistant provider, or through private healthcare, that's certainly a route to follow, because CBT is something that teaches you techniques that you can carry for life, as you said, isn't it, Debbie? It's not, you don't have to keep paying out for that kind of service. It can help give you some structure that can help. Yeah. Okay. Any other last comments you want to add at the end of the episode for today?
Well, do have a look at people like, as you know, I work for MHFA England a lot, delivering their training, and their website has some tools that you can use to address your stress. So I would sort of signpost you towards the MHFA England website, and obviously my website is going to be signposted as well, which has got some tools on there. And the tool that I'd love you to have a look at is called the Stress Container tool, and it invites you to sort of think about, well, first of all, how big is my container? Because we've all got different size containers. That's just how we are sort of born, I suppose. It's more of a genetic thing. Resilience is not a fixed quality, of course, but if you can at least look at, how big is my container, what can I cope with, and then you can start to think about, what are my helpful coping strategies, what are my unhelpful coping strategies, and what is my stress signature. So that's my sort of top tip, is address your stress.